Hello, welcome to Ray Recommend. So this past month I've been going into schools and prisons, and I thought to talk about why and how poets should and could be connecting with those kinds of spaces. I thought about this because I was recently asked to be part of the men panel on the at the Women of the World Festival at the Southbank Centre. And I was asked this question, which got me thinking, which was, what role does masculinity play in the field of work that I'm currently in? So people wanted to know what my insights were as a Jamaican, British, heterosexual male who grew up in a working class household in Hackney, held down by a single parent. I came out of state school with less than 5 GCSEs. And this means that I share the same statistical background as 10% of UK's current imprisoned population, which is politicised as Broken Britain. So as a teacher and a poet, I've spent most of my time going into schools now, being in classrooms. And I've been to a few prisons where I'm speaking mostly to young boys and men, facilitating writing and performance workshop, encouraging them to write autobiographical poetry that explores their identities and histories. So much of my own poetry is grounded in family and identity and coming to terms with hearing loss. And I like the idea that writers live twice, in life and on the page. In fact, you could probably even say 3 times in my case, because then there's also the stage. There is power in reliving and re-observing and clarifying your experience, because this gives us an opportunity to invent or give them a new meaning. A friend of mine from New York called John Sands, poet, he calls this being an emotional historian, because in class we encourage writers to examine not just what happened to them, but how they felt when it happened. And this enables us to feel in classrooms in a way that we get to use that feeling to find ourselves in the shape of language. So again, for me, a lot of my writing is kind of finds its way in through the vein of identity. So I'm exploring, black identity, white identity, hearing identity, deaf identity. And this is something that I've found that I've often had to explain and clarify for people, because based on appearances, they probably wouldn't know where to place. So I often found that I had to explain myself to a world that couldn't quite make out what camp I was in, where I belong. Language, spoken and signed and written, is essentially how I present myself to the world. And every classroom I go into is different. But a reoccurring idea is that boys and young men find it difficult to express themselves. Like, it's not something that is part of being masculine. And I think this is an assumption that needs to be challenged. Emotional expression, self-esteem, when coupled with literacy in these spaces, is often low. Mainly because I think a lot of the boys and young men that I work with have come from environments where what they have to say and how they feel about what they have to say hasn't been validated. And this could be a failure of multiple things in their environments. And I forgot, because I've kind of been in this world for a while, that this is an unusual thing. So when I'm in spaces like where I was at the Southbank, when I was talking about the kind of things that I've seen, people are like, wow, so you're seeing these guys in prison and inner city schools who are emotionally expressive and literate. And I mean, I've left a lot of spaces like those in pieces, thinking about the kind of talent that's wasted inside an institution. So we are not healthy people if we aren't expressing ourselves honestly. We can't be. So when thinking about masculinity and the ideas of what they are, I feel like so much of that is environmental, not biology. That determines mainstream gender norms and gender roles, because identity is something we perform. So in writing, when we're in the space where we can re-explore and re-examine how we're performing in our everyday lives, we get to reinvent ourselves. And I will say that the best schools and prisons and outreach community projects that I've seen are the ones that employ people locally, people who care and understand and connect to the community they're from and have an understanding of the mentality of the people that are there. You know, I've seen this from other poets, from athletes, from artists who run programs that help inmates, students, participants to feel connected, to feel valued, to feel heard, to feel like they belong. Ray recommends.